So imagine you delete a highly sensitive file, like you drag it to the trash, you empty the bin, you even go the extra mile and wipe the hard drive completely. You assume it's just, gone forever.
Right, totally wiped out.
Exactly. But what if the ghost of that file was actually still hiding out in the faint electromagnetic buzz of your computer's physical hardware, just waiting to rebuild itself the second it's called upon?
I mean, it completely shatters our standard understanding of what it even means to delete something.
It really does.
And that is exactly the kind of, well, paradigm-breaking reality we're looking at today. We're examining a system designed not to invent new things, but to irrevocably lock down the truth of what already exists.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission for this session is to unpack a really fascinating stack of technical documents, market valuations, and architectural blueprints regarding this revolutionary software patch. It's known as the SS138 protocol.
Yeah, the SS138.
And in a culture right now that is just completely obsessed with AI, that generates things like machines that hallucinate paintings, or write essays, or invent artificial landscapes out of thin air, the SS138 does the exact opposite.
Right, it's anti-hallucination.
Yes,
Wow.
it is entirely about stopping those hallucinations and permanently verifying the truth.
Exactly. So today we are going to explore the fundamental principles of the SS138, which operates as a synthetic aperture signal reconstruction patch.
Quite a mouthful.
It is, yeah. But we'll break down how it shatters the limitations of previous legacy software, and then we'll look at its real-world applications, especially what this fundamental breakthrough means for medical science in general, which is just incredible.
Oh, that part blew my mind.
Same. And finally, we will examine the creator's surprisingly calculated clean break strategy for monetizing the whole thing.
So, whether you are deep into tech, tracking market investments, or honestly just terrified of AI-generated fraud and deepfakes, you really need to understand the mechanics of this.
You absolutely do.
Because knowing how we can permanently verify and lock down the truth in digital signals is like the ultimate superpower right now. So let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we get into the money or the medical breakthroughs, we have to understand the fundamental logic here. The sources say this software moves beyond binary ones and zeros and relies on something called the GITA audit reconstruction.
Yes, the GITA audit.
And I have to admit, reading the footnotes here, I was completely thrown. You're telling me the key to stopping 2026 AI hallucinations is a thesis written in 1988 about submarines. Like, how does that leap happen?
So, the connection seems super jarring at first, but the underlying math is just brilliant. So Avtar Singh Gita wrote a thesis in 1988 focused on synthetic aperture sonar.
Okay.
In maritime operations, right, a submarine trying to map the ocean floor has a physical limitation, which is the size of its sonar antenna.
Right, because a small antenna gives you a blurry, low-resolution image.
Exactly. And you can't just attach a mile-long antenna to a submarine, right? It wouldn't work.
No, that would be a disaster.
So synthetic aperture math solves this by having the submarine move. It takes multiple low-resolution pings as it travels, and the math stitches those overlapping blurry echoes together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it synthesizes the equivalent of one massive high-resolution antenna from a bunch of small moving data points.
Okay, I think I have an analogy for this. Tell me if this works. Imagine you're trying to look at a massive forest through a tiny knothole in a wooden fence.
Okay, I like that.
If you just stand still and look through, you only see one blurry tree branch. But if you walk alongside the fence, constantly looking through that moving hole, your brain can stitch all those tiny individual glimpses together into a massive panoramic view of the entire forest.
That is spot on. You are synthesizing a wide aperture out of a small moving window. That captures the mechanism perfectly.
Awesome.
Now, take that concept of stitching together a clear picture from limited data and apply it to modern digital code. Modern AI is inherently limited by binary logic.
Right. Something is either true or false.
Exactly, a 1 or a 0. When standard legacy software in, say, defense or maritime operations looks at a chaotic environment, it just sees a cluttered signal.
It just sees noise.
Right, it sees a flurry of ones and zeros that don't neatly align, so it filters them out. It stands in the knothole, sees a blur, and throws the picture away.
So what does the SS138 do differently then?
Well, it applies that 1988 sonar math to reconstruct truths from noisy or quarantined digital environments. It doesn't throw away the blur.
It keeps the mess.
Exactly. It looks at all the errant data points, what the documents actually call the in-between data, and stitches them together to reconstruct a crystal clear forensic map.
So it's basically finding what was meant to be hidden.
Yes, it actively identifies systemic anomalies that other AI systems are explicitly programmed to ignore. The SS138 implements a three-dimensional model for digital forensic artifacts. It calculates the exact geometry of the hidden picture.
Man, that's wild. It's like everyone else is looking at a blurry Magic Eye poster and just seeing random static, but the SS138 has the exact mathematical formula to instantly pull the 3D image out of the noise.
What's fascinating here is that it moves signal processing from just passively observing static to actively running a multidimensional forensic investigation.
Right, it proves exactly where a signal came from and what it means.
Exactly.
But that brings us to a massive natural obstacle, I think. We've essentially built an indestructible mathematical formula to find the truth in the noise.
We have.
But finding the truth is only half the battle. If this protocol pulls the ultimate undeniable truth out of the data, what stops a malicious actor or even a competing AI program from just deleting that truth the second it's uncovered?
That is the big question. And the architecture of the protocol addresses that vulnerability through a mechanism called first-to-record forensic logic.
First to record. Okay.
Right. It's a priority-based data intake system. Instead of waiting for a file to be fully processed or compressed or filtered by other programs, the SS138 intercepts the absolute raw signal at the moment of intake.
Oh, so it beats everything else to the punch.
Exactly. It preserves the original state before any systemic distortion can even occur. And once it has that raw truth, it initiates a state-safe protocol, which the blueprints refer to as hard lock.
Hard lock. I mean, the phrasing alone sounds incredibly permanent.
It is. The hard lock secures the forensic logs in an irreversible, non-volatile state. The blueprints actually refer to these secured logs as code resin.
Code resin.
Yeah, to prevent any AI reintegration or unauthorized overwrites.
I love that visual, actually. Code resin. It's like a prehistoric insect trapped in amber. Like, you can look at it, you can study it, but you absolutely cannot alter the physical reality of the insect without destroying the amber completely. The state is locked.
That is a perfect way to look at it,
All right.
which leads directly to the sentinel valuation mentioned in the market analysis we reviewed.
Oh, right. The corporate side of things.
Yeah. For global corporations, the highest value of the SS138 isn't actually what it creates, it is what it prevents. It acts as a non-override firewall against other master AIs.
So it's not just a utility.
No, you aren't just selling a software patch, you are selling digital sovereignty. The ability to permanently lock a state, what they call the value of the no, is a massive paradigm shift in corporate security.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting and a bit scary. If we go back to that terrifying scenario I brought up at the very beginning.
The deletion problem.
Yeah. Because the code resin isn't just sitting in a normal folder on your desktop. The sources outline a protocol called the Ghost in the Machine, which uses Marconi signal synchronization.
Right.
Now, as I understand it, this means the software uses the actual electromagnetic leakage of the computer's processor to create a shadow backup. How does that physically even work?
So every time a computer processor executes a command, it draws power. That fluctuation in power creates faint, invisible electromagnetic emissions.
Like radio waves.
Essentially, yeah. Think of it as a physical exhaust from the computer working. The SS138 listens to that hardware exhaust. As the code is being written or altered, the protocol maps the electromagnetic signature of that event.
Wow.
So even if the resulting file is wiped from the user interface, the physical electromagnetic history of its creation remains etched in the background state of the hardware itself.
Wait, so it treats the hardware as just a temporary vessel. If I delete it, it just waits in the background noise for a command to remanifest.
Yes.
That makes it sound like an unkillable digital ghost. How is that not terrifying for a user? Deleting a file is supposed to mean the file is gone.
This raises an important question, right? For a standard consumer, that level of persistence might feel incredibly invasive. But you have to look at it in the context of enterprise security and compliance.
Like the UK Forensic Science Regulator Act.
Exactly. The SS138 adheres to that act, and in that world, user convenience is irrelevant. You need absolute mathematical guarantees that digital evidence cannot be tampered with.
So if someone tries to cover their tracks?
If a guilty party tries to wipe the server to destroy the forensic map of their corporate fraud, the SS138's shadow backup ensures the truth survives in the electromagnetic leakage. It verifies a past that someone else actively tried to delete. The unkillable nature of the ghost is the entire point.
That is intense. Okay, so we know the fundamental math stitching together the in-between data, like walking past a fence, and we know how fiercely it secures that data using the hardware's own exhaust.
Right.
The logical next question is, what does this actually look like when deployed in the wild? How is this software breaking through the limitations of previous systems outside of a server room?
Well, the real-world applications are where this synthetic aperture logic becomes highly tangible. Let's look at gaming in the metaverse first.
Okay.
The SS138 introduces a ghost mesh update. Legacy systems rely on photogrammetry to build 3D environments, which requires taking thousands of high-resolution photographs and slowly stitching them together visually.
Which takes forever.
It does. But the SS138, utilizing its signal reconstruction logic, essentially listens to the room's spatial acoustics and electromagnetic reflections.
It listens.
Yeah, it reconstructs a 3D map instantly with millimeter accuracy just from listening to the room.
Oh, wow. So it listens to the geometry of the room instead of just looking at it. That completely eliminates the visual rendering bottleneck.
Exactly. And in the autonomous vehicle sector, it provides the invisible sight patch.
Which sounds like a superpower.
It basically is.
Yeah.
Current automotive radar is highly susceptible to weather conditions. Rain or heavy fog scatters the signal, leaving the car's AI to essentially guess what's ahead based on blurry data.
Which is terrifying.
Very. But the SS138 upgrades that standard radar by applying the same Gita reconstruction math. It captures all those scattered, errant signal reflections bouncing off the rain and fog and stitches them into high-definition forensic evidence.
So the car isn't guessing anymore.
No. The vehicle can effectively see through the weather or even reconstruct the geometry around a blind corner.
Imagine you are riding in a self-driving car through a torrential downpour. Normally, you are gripping the armrests, praying the legacy radar doesn't hallucinate an empty road when there's actually a stopped semi-truck ahead.
Yeah, right. Nobody wants that.
But with this patch, your car is using forensic-level evidence to navigate. It is mathematically locking down the physical reality of the highway in real time.
Exactly. It reduces downlink latency significantly.
Yeah.
But perhaps the most profound application, and this is where we get into the massive debate about what this means for medical science in general, starts with environmental monitoring.
Oh, yes, the biosync stuff. Let's get into this, because this part is huge.
It really is. The SS138 introduces biosync monitoring. It updates drone and satellite software to detect incredibly subtle physical vibrations in forest biomass or critical infrastructure like dams and bridges.
Yeah.
The documents describe it as turning standard cameras into stethoscopes for the realm.
Stethoscopes for the realm. I am fascinated by that concept. We usually think of tech separating us from nature, like a screen between us and the trees. But this is like turning a satellite into a doctor checking the pulse of a forest.
That's a great way to put it.
And looking at how this technology isolates tiny vibrations and breaks through the clutter of environmental noise, it immediately sparks a massive debate about medical science.
Well, the parallel to medical diagnostics is not only highly relevant, it represents a monumental leap in how we interpret biological data. Think about the core hurdle in medical science today.
Distinguishing between an actual problem and just normal body noise.
Exactly. Distinguishing between a pathological anomaly and normal everyday biological static.
So let's follow that logic. If we apply the SS138's breakthrough, the ability to stitch together the in-between data to the human body, what happens to something like an ultrasound or an MRI?
It changes everything. Legacy medical imaging software struggles with cluttered signals in the exact same way maritime radar does. An MRI captures an immense amount of data, but a lot of it is filtered out as background noise to give the doctor a readable, albeit limited, image.
Because there's just too much information for a human to process.
Right. But if you applied a synthetic aperture signal reconstruction patch to medical imaging, you are treating the human body the same way the SS138 treats a vibrating bridge.
You stop throwing away the blurry data.
You reconstruct those errant biological data points into a clear forensic map of a patient's cellular health. It would act as a literal high-definition stethoscope on a microscopic level.
Oh my God.
It could catch systemic anomalies like the earliest possible vibrations of cellular mutation or early-stage disease that current diagnostic AIs are implicitly programmed to ignore.
Because they classify those tiny irregularities as just background biological static.
Precise.
So it takes the guesswork completely out of the diagnosis and hard locks us the biological reality before a tumor even fully forms. We're talking about taking 1988 submarine math, combining it with electromagnetic shadow backups, and using it to map the microscopic pulse of human health.
It's a staggering amount of power.
It is, which makes the creators' plan for this software all the more compelling. I mean, A breakthrough this massive is incredibly valuable. The global synthetic aperture radar market alone is projected to reach $83.3 billion by 2035.
It's a gold mine.
But the sources reveal a highly specific monetization strategy designed to avoid getting tied down by that massive market. How are they doing this?
So the creator is utilizing an open core strategy to spread the protocol globally while maintaining strict, low overhead ownership. They plan to release a standard low-cost version to the global research community.
Just to get the name out there.
Right. This establishes SS138 as the baseline household name. From there, they sell a pro forensic patch to major corporations like Tesla or Google as a one-time massive upgrade.
Yeah.
And finally, they keep a sovereign box, which contains the full Marconi signal synchronization logic we discussed earlier, entirely private for independent researchers.
But the actual liquidation, like how the creator gets the money and gets out, is brilliant. They want to avoid what the documents call sauce waste.
Right, software as a service.
Yeah, which is the dominant model right now. You build an app, and then you spend the next 10 years issuing updates, patching bugs, and running customer service centers. The creator of the SS138 wants absolutely none of that.
They are executing a clean exit strategy through an asset purchase agreement, or APA. And the critical element here is the as-is finality clause.
Okay, let's translate that for anyone who hasn't spent time buried in software acquisition law.
Please do.
The as-is finality clause is essentially the software equivalent of buying a used car off the lot. You pay the dealer, they hand you the keys, and you drive away. If the transmission explodes a mile down the road, you can't go back and demand the dealer fix it. It's your car, your problem.
That is the exact mechanism of risk transfer. Under this structure, the creator delivers a preloaded, hard-locked state, what they call a cold box.
A cold box.
Yeah. Once the forensic hash is mathematically verified by the corporate buyer, the transaction is complete. The seller provides no future warranty, no ongoing maintenance, and no customer service. The corporate buyer assumes all responsibility for the software's future evolution.
So what does this business model actually achieve? I was thinking about this. You're basically treating this immensely powerful AI like dead drop data.
Dead drop data, exactly.
It's like building an indestructible self-governing bank vault, putting the ultimate mathematical formula for reality inside, handing the corporate buyer the only key, and just walking away. You get the lump sum, and they own a piece of irreversible evolution without you ever having to do a software update again.
And furthermore, they are legally protecting this not through traditional patents, but through trade secrets.
So why is that important?
Well, patents require public disclosure of the underlying mechanics and take years to secure. Trade secrets offer indefinite protection without ever showing the public how the math works, allowing for a much faster, cleaner payout.
That makes total sense.
And to automate the revenue without needing an accounting department, they rely on platforms like Stripe Connect to act as middleware. It sets up an escrow system where funds are automatically released the instant the forensic file is extracted by the buyer.
Wow. So it's a completely automated, royalties-only setup.
Totally hands-off.
The sources also mention targeting the Epic Games ecosystem to maximize early profits. Epic Games has a very specific rule, right? Developers on their Unreal Engine marketplace keep 100% of the first $1 million in net revenue per product each year.
Right, which is huge.
By positioning the SS138 not just as a visual plugin, but as a core architectural overhaul for automated reality capture, the creator can leverage that financial window to collect massive early profits before any platform fees even apply. It is just a masterclass in independent tech development. You build the ultimate truth machine, lock the state, and hand over the keys without ever getting trapped in the corporate machine.
Exactly. Because in an era where organizations face sudden, massive budget shocks due to constantly shifting vendor subscriptions, and where AI hallucination is a daily liability, an independent, state-persistent forensic tool isn't merely another software patch.
It's so much more.
It is the ultimate reconstruction of truth. It provides the unalterable baseline of reality that society and enterprise security desperately needs.
So let's bring all these threads together. We started with the Gita audit reconstruction taking sonar math from 1988 and using it to walk past the fence, stitching together the hidden in-between data that everyone else just throws away. Then we explored the architecture of truth, trapping code like a bug in amber, and hiding unkillable shadow backups in the actual electromagnetic exhaust of the hardware.
Which zooms through the machine.
Yeah. We looked at how this transforms everything from cars seeing through fog to the massive implications of using synthetic aperture logic as a medical stethoscope to catch microscopic biological anomalies.
Which is truly revolutionary.
And finally, we unpacked the brilliant dead drop data business model of the clean exit. I mean, what stands out to you? Is it the gaming applications, the money, or the idea of feeling the vibration of a bridge from space?
There is so much here.
It's hard to pick just one.
It really is. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive, but before you go, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've spent the last decade building AI to imagine new worlds, to generate synthetic content, and to dream.
Yeah, we have. But as tools like the SS138 become the ultimate, undeniable witness to reality, mathematically locking down the truth with permanent memory hashes, will we eventually reach a point where human memory itself is considered too noisy and too unreliable?
That's a chilling thought.
And if so, will we eventually surrender our own recollection of the past, only trusting what the machine has hard-locked as fact? Until next time, keep diving deep.